guys, welcome back to Indie Wrestling Corner with another episode of Under the Ropes. I'm your host, as always, the queen of the Indies, Tiffany. And today I have my good friend, Seabass Finn. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited that we finally get to have you work on this podcast. I know that we've had you a little bit on like some of the Indie Talks episodes where you made like an appearance. So now we're going to have an official interview. So thank you. Thank you for coming. So, guys, if you're new here to the Under the Rope series, here I interview everything independent wrestling, whether it's wrestlers, promoters, referees, backstage. I got you covered. If you guys got questions for Steve Aspen, please feel free. Drop them into the chat. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to answer all of your questions. So, so let's start this out because it's like I've known you like when you kind of first started, and now like I was just talking to him saying that like now he's gonna start blowing up. So I like from the very beginning, putting people onto the podcast so they can learn a little bit more. So let's start from the beginning a little bit with you, back to basics pretty much. Talk about how you got into professional wrestling and like how you ended up like picking training at NEPA.
That's a great question. So I was an amateur wrestler for 15 years. I started in second grade, did that all the way through college. At some point in high school, my junior year English teacher wanted us to do this project on like something we were like an expert on, like something we could do a TED Talk on, talk about for like 15, 20 minutes. And I picked pro wrestling just because I had like grown up, watching it with my dad. I was a big fan. Went to where did I go? The Survivor Series 2008 at the TD Garden. So I did that project, and then I had the same teacher senior year, and he wanted us to do like a similar project, kind of like a passion, like career, like dream project or whatever. And I once again did it on pro wrestling, and I like researched like wrestling schools in the area. And, like the two I think that I found was like the Ring of Honor dojo at the time, which was down in Pennsylvania. And then the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, which was in North Andover, only like 40 minutes from my house. And through that project is where I discovered independent wrestling and chaotic wrestling, specifically as my first independent experience. I went to a few of the shows there and was just kind of like a annoying, weird fan that would like talk to some wrestlers at the merch table. That's where I met Anthony Green. He told me I should start training at Nepois, and that was around like 2018, 2019. It took me until 2020 to actually start training. This was during the pandemic. At the time, I started college 2018, so going into my junior year, that summer. I had met more wrestlers at Nepois and Chaotic through the one-day fantasy camps that they put on so frequently, and that's how I met Brad Cashew, and we kind of got in touch. And so I hit him up during the pandemic asking about training. He got back to me around June saying, "We're opening up the school. Would you like to start training?" I said, "Yes, absolutely." And that was also around the time where the school was kind of shifting ownership. Chase Del Monte and Max Smashmaster had just taken over. So I am Chase Del Monte's first student under his kind of head trainer position. So I started June of 2020 training there. And it was very much kind of like a trial by fire process. I kind of already I did 3 one-day fantasy camps at Nepois. Don't know why after 3 in a whole pandemic I decided to sign up, but guess it took me 3 times to realize like, okay, let's actually try to pursue this. So it was a lot of smaller classes with students who were far above my ability level and that were like kind of already on shows, already having matches. While I had like just started, people like Becca, Armani Chaos, Paris Van Dale. Some people even drove up from other places like Ashley Vox, Delmi XO, CPA. and it was really cool to kind of like almost start my training and like just kind of get thrown in with some pretty advanced wrestlers and like just roll around with them. Um, then about a year later, I kind of took a little bit of time off, focused on my amateur wrestling career when COVID kind of cleared up. Finished up my senior year at Springfield College, which is where I graduated from. Same alma mater as John Cena, so it's kind of like I'm following a similar path to one of my favorite wrestler of all time, John Cena. Uh, then after I graduated, I continued to pursue it, professional wrestling full time. And last year, I had the privilege of going out to Los Angeles to train at the New Japan LA Dojo in Carson, California, with my good friend Sean Vegan Keegan. And then I've been back in New England since October of 2023. And yeah, it's been a pretty crazy ride since 2020 to now. Traveling all over the Northeast, even using some of my money and free time to just travel across the country to other states, other places, check out wrestling shows. Even if I'm not wrestling, I just love traveling, and to be able to look at other places, other scenes, other regions is like just the best. I really enjoy it.
Awesome. That's amazing. I have a question for you. Let me like give some love in the chat. So I see Zach's in the chat. He goes, third time was the charm. He goes, Ed's in the chat. He said, hi. Make sure you share the stream, guys. I see we got like a whole bunch of people. So I see a bunch of people on YouTube. I see a bunch of people on Facebook. I see a bunch of people on Twitter. So yeah, share the stream, get some people in here. Appreciate it. Let me know if the audio sounds really good also too. So I think it's good. I made some tweaks. So just let me know. My chat is not coming up on the restream, so I'm gonna try to grab all your questions and all that stuff manually, I guess. So let me ask you this, because like you brought up something. So like, how was, and I feel like this should be like a question that I should start asking people, how was the transition from being a fan and then like going into being a wrestler?
That's a good question. Fan to wrestler. I would say it was pretty easy. I feel like amateur wrestling kind of taught me a lot of like, like skills on like kind of like respect and discipline. So like to kind of transition from like being a fan and like, when you're around like people who like, you'd see wrestle on TV and stuff like that to now like, I'm sharing the ring with them. Like it's, like I try to keep to myself. I try to, be reserved and not bother too many people. Although some of my trainers have told me that like that could bite me in the butt, and it's just better to like go up to people and introduce yourself and shake your hand than not do it at all. Cause I think that's more like you'd rather be perceived as like, oh, this guy's a little annoying. Like you don't have to me when I'm calling my match or whatever, as opposed to like, oh, that guy didn't come up to me. Like, what's his problem? So I think it was fairly smooth. I definitely got, I felt like I got trained right at Nepois by Chase and Max. They kind of instill things in me and other students about like proper etiquette and what to do and what not to do on shows. And there's a lot of other experienced and advanced students that also instill that in upcoming and wrestlers and trainees. So it is still pretty cool. Like for me, like there is still like that internal fan in me. Like chaotic wrestling was my first view of independent wrestling. So seeing, people like Josh Briggs, Bear Country, Christian Casanova, like all those guys just kind of like now transitioning to like the TV world. And it's like, man, like, 5 years ago, like I was watching them, in a sports and fitness center in Lowell, Massachusetts. And now I'm seeing them on TV. So like, if anything, the experience of being like an independent wrestling fan to now being an independent pro wrestler, it only kind of motivates me to like, continue to pursue this because, I feel like I'm only just like following in their, their footsteps of, the people I watched, and it kind of makes it the dream more real and more attainable in my head.
Absolutely. So awesome. So Chase Del Monte's been on this podcast. Max Smashmaster's been on this podcast. We've talked about all that stuff. So if you guys are very interested, make sure you go check out those interviews as well. So they talked about training and the camps, the fantasy camps. Like we went into very big details about this. So, and they run them every so often. So make sure that you're following them as well. If you want some more information, because everybody's always looking, right? Like, how do you find the perfect school? And like, there is a whole bunch of places here, and NEPA is definitely one, and Chase Del Monte and Max Master are like everything going on there. So check that out too. So I feel like, we're gonna like dive deep into it already. So again, like I said, I'm gonna like backtrack also too, but I feel like, you working Dijak at Wrestling Open kind of put a lot more eyes on you. So if people weren't familiar with you before, if like they didn't know you from Chaotic or like, anywhere else over there, this kind of put like a good chunk of eyes. So I was like, okay, like he's wrestling Dijak, and you held your own. And this was such a solid match. It was the match that we all needed, that we didn't know we needed. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I had been on Open before, but it had kind of just been a while. I think about maybe like anywhere from 6 to 8 months. Earlier this year, I was on a few times. I kind of broke in there earlier this year. Had like a spotlight match, a few other things. I was in there last year a little bit too. And in end of June is when Donovan Dijak left the WWE and came back to the Indies, and he became a trainer at Nepwa, along with Anthony Green, which has been huge for not only me but the rest of the students at Nepwa. And I was pretty keen on like going to just about all of his classes, any class that I could make. I would find time and go to. I was there just about every Wednesday. And at first it was difficult and scary and intimidating. Not just Dijak, but the class itself, the things he'd make us do in training. I just kind of kept going and trying to learn as much as I could from him. And then I want to say about like maybe a week before that match happened, I had asked to ride up to Limitless with him because I found out I was booked on the show, and he was as well. So we kind of coordinated that, and then he texted me the next day and said, "Hey, would you work for Beyond Wrestling or Wrestling Open down in Worcester?" And I said, "Yeah, I've worked for them before, but it's been a minute." And he was like, "Well, are you free next Thursday?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." And then, a couple days later, got a few texts from some other people and found out I was on Wrestling Open, and I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then, I actually didn't know I was wrestling Dijak, I think, until it got maybe announced. so like, I could have just assumed it's like, "Oh, do you think he's gonna like wrestle me?" I don't know. Lo and behold, it was me. I was actually like handpicked by Dijak, which was really, really cool. And that was also his Wrestling Open debut, the first time he wrestled on Open. So for me to wrestle him was like a badge of honor, especially to be handpicked by him. And he kicked my ass. I did a little bit, but he definitely got the better of me. Which most people would be like, "Yeah, that checks out." But I don't think, like you said, a lot of people maybe didn't expect me to hold my own as well as I did. After the match, I sat down with him because he's my trainer, and we talked, and he pretty much just told me that he had seen the work that I had put in at his classes. I was frequently attending just about all of them. And he said that he kind of saw that I was, maybe like not necessarily like plateauing or not improving, but he said that he thought that wrestling him would make me better, and I honestly think it did because it kind of just showed like it put me into a position where I almost had to perform and practice what he's been teaching me since the end of June. So um, like for him to say after that, I held my own in there and that I did really well and that he was proud of me, like was just it meant the world. Um, like he sacrificed a weeknight with his kids. He has a family and a wife and two kids, and he sacrificed that time, which is incredibly important to make me better. Which just really meant the world to me. It was very, very kind and very generous of him, despite his kind of mean mug and look. He's a nice guy,
Yeah.
and I couldn't be more grateful for him to give me that match. And I will agree, it did kind of like put me on the map, or at least like it did, and it made me significantly better. I feel like just that one match, and since then it's just kind of been snowballing. With that, my Limitless debut, wrestling for New Japan Strong in Lowell, Mass. Working down at ETU in Jersey, like I feel like all of that has kind of stemmed from October 10th, which is pretty ironic because that's my parents' anniversary,
Good
and they
luck.
actually came to that show. Yeah, it's a great day. 10. And that day was also really special. Just like the people who kind of showed up for me. My parents were there. My girlfriend came by to see it. My two aunts, one lives in Worcester, the other lives like just outside of Boston. They came, and then also one of my uncles who I hadn't seen in like a really long time, probably at least like 3-4 years, I want to say. He showed up, and I didn't realize it until I was in the ring, and I just saw him. He waved at me, and it was just like I got emotional just seeing him there. Like, wow, like he showed up, of all people. Not that I wasn't, happy that like my parents and
Of
some of my
course.
extended family from were there, but like seeing my uncle who I hadn't seen in forever was like, man, this was cool. Um, but yeah, that's a day, a match that I will never forget, and I will hold very, very close to my heart, as an amazing moment in my career.
I love that for you. So it's like I've been up, like, I mean, I've seen you in Chaotic, like I've been up actually when you were in Wrestling Open, even before the fact that I drove up to Massachusetts. And, so I've seen you've seen me like there a couple of times, like before, just hanging out at Wrestling Open, so, but I love like moments like this, like pass the torch, right? And then it's the fact that these wrestlers, like, they're so good and they know how to bring out the best in like you guys and everything like that. So just like that moment, like that, it was just like he was just bringing out the best in you, which is great. So which, like you said, like it just snowballed, right? So it's just amazing. So I'm so happy for you. So like congratulations for like that moment. So a lot of us are very proud for you. So but yeah, so let's talk a little about some other matches too here, because I just had Sammy Diaz on the podcast earlier in the week. So we talked about your match at Fight Life. So I came up to Fight Life for this. So I was sitting front row and center for this. And there's a lot of things we could talk about here. But he had said, on the podcast Monday, he was like, this match needs to be run back. He was like, because you got the best of him. And literally, like, my mouth dropped. And I was like, yo, he just beat Sammy Diaz. I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is crazy. So talk to us a little bit about that. And, will there be a run back of this match?
Yeah, that was another like little like hidden gem like match that I think people like expected to be good, but I think it kind of exceeded everyone's expectations. I think Sammy Diaz is phenomenal. I think he's one of the best wrestlers in the Northeast, with already a pretty packed region, a packed territory, the Northeast. He's solid. He actually kind of shares similar roots to the New Japan LA Dojo. I think he went there for some camps and seminars while Katsuyori Shibata was the trainer there. So he's got a kind of a one up on me because I'm a huge Shibata fan, and obviously I would have loved to train under him. Um, Obviously, still very grateful to train under Fred Rosser and Kushida for 3 whole months. That's something that nobody can ever take away from me, and something that I wear as a badge of honor to be a uh, part of the second graduating class of the New Japan Academy. But the match with Sammy Diaz was a sprint. We were both pretty tired after it, and yeah, I caught him. He had me. He 100% had me dead to rights, and I somehow came out on top. So I agree. I think there should be a rematch. Hoping and praying that it's at Fight Life and we get maybe a best of three, a best of five, something out of it. I know there were some people in the back that kind of agreed and said, "Okay, we got to do this again." So I don't know if that's going to happen maybe in January on the 16th in Connecticut, closer to Sammy's hometown, or if that happens maybe later in February. Haven't heard anything. I'm not sure yet, but I would love to wrestle Sammy again, wherever it is. Fight Life, somewhere else in Connecticut, Massachusetts, anywhere in New England. It'd be a pleasure to share the ring with him again.
He's got a lot of belts going on here, so maybe you'd be coming after.
I'd like to run. I gotta, take a step back. I think he's getting up there.
He's got 4 belts right now. We talked about it, so maybe like the Skywalker belt will go up. We got Test Strand, BST. So I don't know, he's ready to throw all these belts on the line here. He's got 4. He lost the 5th belt.
I know. He's got to get to 5.
He does. So I don't know. He might be coming in for that Blitzkrieg. Well, if you watch Blitzkrieg last night, guys, he went after CPA last night. So maybe he'll be Blitzkrieg. Maybe maybe that will happen or whatever. So I guess you got to stay tuned for that as well. So actually, so let's segue into Blitzkrieg because since we're talking about Blitzkrieg also, so shout out to them as well. They have some great stuff. So Andy Brown is back. Your thick daddy. I was so excited. I was actually texting some of the wrestlers and I'm like, how do you not tell me that he's coming back? I was like, you're rude. I was so excited that you got to wrestle him as his first match back. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was almost similar to the Dijak match. I didn't find out about it until a few days before it happened. Andy Brown is someone who I look up to as just an amazing guy, hilarious, a pleasure to have in the locker room. Whether you're wrestling against him, you're sharing the locker room with him. He's, I think, one of the most beloved guys in the Northeast, just because of who he is. So I found out about that match maybe 2 or 3 days before that Saturday. I also hadn't been on Blitzkrieg since maybe May, I want to say. Yeah, it was May. I had my 100th match at Blitzkrieg Pro in a fatal 4-way tag match. It was me and 50 Cal against Delta House, Jay George, and Angelo Carter. And then who were the last 2? Shook Crew. Yes. So I think that was the last time I was at Blitzkrieg before my match with Andy Brown. Then I found out I was wrestling Andy Brown right before CPA wrestled Dijak, which is an incredible match. Please go watch it.
Yeah.
But watch me and Andy Brown before, because just hearing the crowd go nuts when you hear that thick daddy right before his song drops is just so cool. And I believe Blitzkrieg is kind of like his second home away from home in California. It was one of the first places that kind of gave him some chances when he moved to the Northeast. And why wouldn't you book a guy who's wrestled for PWG, even in not just PWG in the Globe Theater, but PWG when it was in Reseda, California. he had a few matches there, some incredible matches. So yeah, to wrestle him in his match back was awesome. I was definitely a little cautious, trying not to, make any re-injuries or
Yes.
hurt him too bad. But I thought we had a great match. I'd love to run it back with him, or honestly, just watching him wrestle is fun. I think he's uh, incredibly entertaining. He can move. He can kick your ass. He can hit you super hard. Um, and I'm really excited to see him, you know, continue his career in 2025. Um, when I was out in California, there were a lot of people that knew him when he lived there. That's kind of where he got his upstart before he moved to Philly. And there were so many people I met. Yeah, I even had a match with one of his best friends, Tyler Bateman, at the New Japan Academy showcase. Um, and, and things that people said about him just made me appreciate him so much more. So now, like, my like I don't care what happens in 2025 or the year after. Like, one of the things that I want to see, not just from me, this is like one thing I want to see out of Andy Brown is him returning back to the West Coast, getting to, maybe West Coast Pro or Prestige, and getting back into that scene, even if it's just for a weekend or a night, because I think he deserves that. I think it would just be cool to see him go back and mix it up with some of the talent on that in that area. People like Alpha Zoe or Titus Alexander. It'd just be really cool. So I love Andy Brown. He's awesome.
Yes, much love for him. If you guys don't know about Andy Brown, he's been on this pod and he talks about like California and all that stuff too. So you could go check that out as well on the stream. So excited for him, excited he's back, and I'm excited that you got to wrestle him. So I popped hard for that. I was like, yeah, I was like, this is awesome. This is like that's awesome. John's in the chat. Good cop, bad cop. He said, "Oh snap! Didn't realize this was today." Hey, Seabass heading back to start. He goes gonna catch up on the live. So thanks for joining on in here. So let's talk a little bit about New Japan Pro Wrestling. So like when it was up in Massachusetts, John was there because me and John were just talking about this on the phone the other day actually. So he said that he got to see you there. I know like a bunch of fans were so excited to see you on that. This is again like big accomplishment. Then to have this in Massachusetts and everything. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. That was also like another match I found out, I think, about a week before. I was reached out to maybe a couple months ago, before the show was even announced, by one of the guys who's kind of a coordinator at the at New Japan Academy. And he reached out to me as a graduate and asked if there was any place that they could rent a ring from in New England to run a show in the Boston area, more specifically Lowell. And I was like, yeah, my school has a couple rings. You could probably rent from us. So I pleaded and begged and convinced Chase to let New Japan use our ring. To which he agreed. And I was kind of thinking like, oh, if they're using our ring and, it's going to be in Lowell, which like is a city I've wrestled in a handful of times. And, they're so close. And like, I just graduated from their school in October of last year. Like, like, is there an opportunity for me? Am I going to get a match? I didn't obviously like ask, like, hey, can I, get a spot or whatever. But Fred Rosser was really kind of pushing for me. Even said to me when I visited California and I visited LA in September for about a week, and he said to me, he's like, if I had it my way, I'd pick you for a strong survivor match against Matt Vandegrift. And lo and behold, that's what ended up happening. So I got to wrestle in the Lowell Memorial Auditorium, which is a pretty cool venue. Uh, Everyone kept saying to me, "Oh, that's where Shawn Michaels lost his smile." Hopefully you don't lose your smile,
Oh
Seabass.
God.
I didn't. I entered the building and left with my smile intact. And it was super cool, like just to have, like my local fan base, my fans who were, like familiar with me, to see me on a stage like that. Um, and it was very surreal for me just to be sharing a locker room with like the Grizzled Young Vets and Shingo Takagi, Konosuke Takeshita, Filthy Tom Lawler, who's one of my favorites, and also someone who I like had the opportunity to meet on several different occasions, and I never got to meet him. Like the first time I saw him wrestle on a show was last year. Like I had known of him, but I hadn't like, seen him wrestle in person until when I was in LA. I went to a Prestige Wrestling show at the Globe Theater. Rest in peace, the Globe Theater. It's no longer no
Yeah.
longer open. And Tom Lawler wrestled Vinny Massaro. Um, and I showed up there early to help out with ring crew, and I saw Tom, and I didn't want to go up to like disturb him, so I didn't, because I try to be nice and considerate, and I don't want to bother anybody. And I told Fred Rosser, who's good friends with Tom, I said, hey, oh, I saw Tom Lawler at a show this week, and he was like, oh, did you go up and say hi and say that you're one of my students? And I said no, and he's like, oh, you should have. Um, and then there were like two or three more shows that I went to that he was wrestling on that I just did the same thing, just not go up to him. And I kind of regret that. But it was cool that I was finally on a show with Tom Lawler and I got to meet him. And he was just a pleasure to meet and a super nice guy. Um, Also having like TMDK there, Zack Sabre Jr., who's someone that I met when I went to Portland back in March and saw him wrestle Daniel Makabe at Prestige Roseland 8. I went out to a bar with one of my good buddies, Jordan Castle, who is a commentator for Prestige, and some of the wrestlers were there, specifically Zack Sabre Jr. So I got to just listen to him talk about wrestling for about 30 minutes and ask him a few questions, and then got a nice picture with him after. So that was a pretty cool full circle moment, meeting Zack Sabre Jr. in a bar in Portland, and now sharing the ring or sharing a locker room and a show with him. And him wrestling and Nepois ring. That's also pretty cool. Um, it was also cool that we just around that time got a brand new wrestling ring that will live in our ring truck, so we don't have to do a crap ton of ring crews of like tearing down a ring at a school, loading it into a truck, bringing it to a show, building it, tearing it down, loading it back into the truck, bringing it back to the school. We've cut that in half.
That's good.
So when we got our new ring, we used it. The first time we used it was at that New Japan show, and I was the first match in it. So that's pretty
Stiff.
cool.
Kind of stiff too.
It was actually pretty nice.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt too bad. But yeah.
These ring crews take like a while. Like I know like a lot of people don't know. Like I've been backstage at a lot of different promotions, and like to be there like hours of the work that like even like you and yourself and like a bunch of the students and stuff like that putting the ring, like there is so much entailed. Like I don't think the fans really realize how much is entailed with everything that goes on to put on a wrestling show. So like kudos to all you guys, because it's a lot. So just like hearing that, it's like, oh, new ring that's just stayed in the truck, and like I've been up to Neva and like and I've seen it put up and stuff. So that's awesome for you guys. You don't have to do that and go back to the school and then put it back for training and everything. So but yeah. So next let's talk chaotic wrestling. Also, like most likely, I wanted to talk about Ricky Smokes, now WWE ID prospect going on here. So I did I posted some clips or whatever. I got to talk to Ricky a little bit, and I asked about the briefcase, and he yelled at me. So that was kind of fun. But you guys wrestled that night, so talk about this is one of probably my favorite matches of the year of you and Ricky. Pretty much this shit was blow my mind, pretty much kind of match. So tell us a little bit about that. Shout out to Ricky, he's amazing too. It was You guys went in on this match. I think, how long was this match? 30? It was over 30 minutes, right? Like, I think it was.
Uh, the main event one.
Yeah.
The heavyweight title.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was just about 35 minutes. I was exhausted. I think he was as well. But yeah, we went to war. And Ricky's someone who could have a great match with anybody. At any time he's out there, he puts on a performance and kicks ass. And to be his first title defense is actually pretty cool. He was actually my first match as Seabass Finn a while ago. It's somewhere on YouTube. If you look it up, you'll probably find it. It's very silly, very funny. But yeah, that was just an awesome match to be. It was my first singles main event. It was my first heavyweight title match. It was Rick's first title defense. And yeah, I was amazed at how focused the crowd was. I thought that after a long night, the main event, they might be, like they might be kind of tired, but they paid attention. They were with us the entire time, and everybody in the back said to me like, "Oh, it didn't feel like 35 minutes. Like it went by pretty quick." And I was like, "You sure?" Like, I felt like I was in there for a pretty long time. I was pretty kind of upset that we went that long, but everybody said that it we had everybody kind of on the edge of their seat the entire time, and it was just amazing. Yeah, it really it kind of almost proved to me like, yeah, Ricky's the real deal. There's a reason why he got ID'd, and if our matches beforehand didn't prove it, then that one had to have. Going 35 minutes is not easy. Couldn't imagine going 60 or something like that. But I mean, now that I know that I could do it, like, hey, I'll do an Ironman match for 30 minutes, maybe 45, but 60 I'd have to prepare for.
Come on, you and Ricky, round 2, round whatever, 3, 4, whatever. Let's go. We're going for Ironman match now. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
This was good. If you guys did not watch, like I'm telling you, this is one of my favorite matches of the year. It was so damn good. So Chaotic streams on Twitch. So make sure you go over there and go give follow on Twitch and go sub, and then you can watch all like the backlog for Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you get a free sub pretty much. So definitely go check that out. Definitely go watch this match because this is, like, again, one of my favorites. Let's do some fan tweets. So actually, Good Cop, Bad Cop's in the chat. So let's do his. So he's got 2. He goes, with fan base sins being an anagram of Seabass Finn, what has been the worst thing one of your fans has done at a wrestling show?
I think I saw this question and I was trying to think. Something that a fan has done to me. There was one time I was wrestling, I think up in Vermont, and I think it was a triple threat between me, Armani Chaos, and Galbar K. Mm-hmm. And I was kicking both their butts, and I think I got thrown out of the ring at one point by maybe Armani. And I had some fans, some kids actually, start just like assaulting me, like beating me up, and I had to like. I didn't want to like put my hands on a kid, but I had to like kind of like tell him to like back off. Like, I'm already getting my ass kicked by these 2 guys. I don't want any more.
The kids with the smoke.
Yeah, no, kids specifically in Vermont, for some reason are just vicious I've only had maybe 2 experiences with it, with kids in Vermont, but I know that that was one. The other one I actually just witnessed. I wasn't a victim of these kids. It was my friend Sean Vegan Keegan. I think he was wrestling Bobby Orlando up at a fair in Vermont. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, Sean got mugged by these kids. Like he got like,
oh my.
This one kid went up to him and just punched him in the gut as hard as he could. And Sean's in good shape. He's got like, full six pack, but like I could tell he was hurting.
Oh God. Oh
Yeah,
my.
yeah,
Wow. Yeah, these kids go in. I've seen it in all different places. I've seen it in Pennsylvania. I've seen it like in Mass. Like, go get your kids. Like, man.
yeah. Where are these parents at?
Yeah, like this could be like the future that you could like rib like one day that you'll be like the big wig pretty much. And then you could rib them like later and haze them pretty much. Damn.
Yeah, I don't know if I can't remember if it was Chuck Taylor or somebody else. I think there was a wrestler that would always love just making kids cry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I remember.
maybe one day when I'm a grizzled old vet, I'll that'll be my mission, to just make a kid cry at every show.
I'm here for it. I like some
Now
of
for
these
now.
like
Now,
some of these heels, they go in, it cracks me up. I sit there and like, this is funny when they go back at the kids. So that was a good question. So shout out to Good Cop, Bad Cop. His other question was, would bass fannies be an anagram of Seabass Finn? What fish has the best fanny? He said, apologies to the British listeners.
uh, that's an interesting question. I've never thought about asses on fish. Um, I know there's that one picture of that starfish that's like kind of caked up. So like
Yeah.
maybe that one, that one specifically, not just like a certain species or like type of fish, just that starfish specifically. That's that's all that comes to mind.
I can't. Thank you for your question, Good Cop, Bad Cop. He always keeps it interesting on the podcast, so with all the wrestlers. So that was pretty good. So we have a fan tweet from Dan. He says, "Tell us what are your favorite fishing stories."
Ooh. Um. Hmm. I gotta. I feel like I have a lot that are just kind of in my head. But most of the time when I go fishing, I am fishing with my grandfather, who is appropriately nicknamed the Bass Man. That's not me, even though I am Seabass Finn. I'm not the Bass Man. That's my grandfather. He taught me and my dad both how to fish. So I'm a third generation fisherman. Not many people know that. Not a third generation wrestler. Nobody's ever wrestled in my family, but third generation fisherman. Yes, that's me. Um, uh, whew, hmm. I've had two different occasions where I've gone up to northern New Hampshire with my dad and my grandfather, just like for like a weekend fishing. This small little town called Errol, New Hampshire. It's in Coos County, which is the most northern county in New Hampshire. We stayed at these sets of cottages. It was this property called Paradise Point that this couple owned, and it was kind of like a family business. They ran it, and sadly, they're no longer taking new customers. So like when all the people who fish there like go up there stop going, like they're closing down, just because they're getting the owners are getting up there in age, and they don't want to keep doing this until they're in their graves. So a little upsetting that like I don't know if I'll ever go back up there again unless my grandfather goes up there and I tag along with him. But I have some very fond memories of that. I remember I think we were fishing one like early in the morning, and we saw a bear swim across the lake.
Oh
like the
my.
part of the lake. Um, Another thing that's also just really cool that I've seen countless times, but I remember seeing it. I don't know if it was that morning or another morning. Um, if you've never been on a lake or like a pond, a body of water, like in the morning, it's pretty cool. Like there's kind of like depending on the temperature, there might be like some steam or some fog coming up from the water. The sun's coming up, like it's beautiful. And There's a bird, a species of bird called a loon, and they're really cool looking. They sound very eerie, like you'll like know their voice. They almost have like I don't know, it's like a howl or like a hoot, kind of like an owl, but a very distinct like call. And they also sometimes will just like almost like run across the water. So they'll just be like just on like the surface.
Oh wow.
So like moving their feet, but they're also just like flapping their wings. I remember seeing that like in the morning, sun's coming up, like just vividly. But I remember there was one time I went fishing with my grandfather, and I have a ton of these stories, so this will probably be my last one. But I fished with my grandfather, and I think we caught close to like 30 fish
Oh wow.
in like just a couple hours, which was pretty impressive. My grandfather can fish like it's nothing. I remember I think there was another time I was like, there's this summer, last story, I promise. Um, I actually thought I was gonna outfish him because like I think he like lost his bait or whatever, his line snapped, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, I'm three, four, five bass ahead. We're strictly bass fishermen here, but that's what he counts. So I was like 4 or 5 ahead, and then I just stopped catching. I just stopped catching fish, and then he caught like 9, 10 in a row. And I was just like, man, like I was up. I had a lead, and then I just blew it, and he outfished.
He's the fish
Like
whisperer.
can't outfish the bass man. He's insane. He's turning 80 in April, so I'm looking forward to that. And he actually was at my 100th match at Blitzkrieg, because he lives down in that area
Mm-hmm.
in close to Enfield. He's in Western Mass. So I'm hoping if I get, another match at like Pro Wrestling Grind, or I go back to Blitzkrieg, that he can see me wrestle again, because he is kind of the inspiration for Seabass Finn. There is no Seabass Finn without my grandfather.
I love that.
Because yeah, those fishing trips up to the northern New Hampshire kind of inspired the character, or inspired Seabass Finn a little bit.
I love that. That's
So
amazing.
yeah, it's very very sentimental. I love my
I
grandfather.
love that. I love that. So much love to that. So we have to talk about it, because it wouldn't be this podcast and it wouldn't be me if we didn't sit here and talk about the perfect bridge. Okay. So, I have corrupted indie wrestling as a whole when it comes to the perfect bridge. So anybody that like new like enters, you're already entered into like my life when the perfect bridge happens. So the fact that he does the perfect bridge, I'm totally here for it, because when I started watching indie wrestling, I knew one wrestler that did the perfect bridge in the indies, and that was Anthony Gangone. I didn't know anybody who did the perfect bridge. So now, fast forward like almost 10 years later, the fact that like everybody's breaking these bridges on the toes and everything, like I'm here for it. Pretty much. So we had to talk about it. We had to talk about it, that you do the perfect bridge, and I pop every time. I'm sure you hear me like pretty much when I'm at the shows, like when it happens.
No, I can thank amateur wrestling for that. We do a lot of those neck bridges, and then even at the LA Dojo, Kushida would frequently make us do that as well, for minutes on end, and it would be a little excruciating, but it helps. And I don't know why I should. You're give me good ideas now. I should definitely do that with my wrestlers. So I'm now, since I'm retired from amateur wrestling, no longer competing in that. Now I'm a pro wrestler. In my free time, I coach amateur wrestling. So I coach a middle school team in my hometown, and I was actually, I want to say 2 years ago, where one of my wrestlers unintentionally helped me come up with a move that I do. It's that weird kind of like catapult German where, I cross their arms, I pull them up and they twist, and I grab them in midair, and then I do a German with a bridge. That came to be from one of my athletes who was like a fifth grader and was like 60 pounds, and I was just like grabbing him by the arms, and I was like, all right, you ready? Jump on 3. And so I'd pull him up, and he'd jump super high in the air, and I did it to him, and he twisted, And so I was like, hold on, do that again. And so I crossed his arms this time and then did it. And then I caught him and I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing, okay, I'm doing, I'm grateful for amateur wrestling for my, it's a solid background, makes me pretty, savvy at tactical wrestling and moving. It also gave me a cool move. So,
Hey, we're here for the perfect bridge, so so I'm here for it. Good cop, bad cop in the chat says my face is aching from laughing at starfish fannies. Good, we're here to make you laugh, which we're all about. We had a fan tweet from Dom. He wants to know, what is your favorite book?
ooh, I like that. I wonder if you knew that I was actually an English major in college. Not a super avid reader. I do not read books currently, although I've been thinking about it. Favorite book. There was a book that I read in high school called Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, and it's about a guy who meets a like telepathic gorilla. Um, Weird concept, but it's pretty cool, and they talk about some pretty like real world issues. Um, so I like that book. That kind of sticks in my head. Um, I also was a teacher for 2 years ago, um, and some books that not only a few books that like I like that we were either I had to teach. One of them was Into the Wild by John Krakauer. Um, I like that book. I know some people kind of are like have a negative feeling about it, but I feel like it is resembled pretty closely to like professional wrestling, where like Chris McCandless kind of just like drops everything he's doing, goes across the country, travels all around, goes to Alaska, kind of tries to pursue just like a passion of his. And the message that he kind of comes up to, in his journaling, that happiness is only real when it's shared, speaks volumes. So I think if somebody could kind of look at it from that perspective, like while I am, kind of on this pro wrestling journey by myself, right? There's other people who are on the same path. So, like we're all on this together, and like, I'll go back to my Dijak match where like I kind of while I had like my family there, I also had two friends who were also on the show in the back that like I trained with, and just to go back there and like kind of like take everything in and be there with them, having them there meant a lot to me, and I even said to them after, when I got back and just sat down with them, and they were kind of just like hyping me up and congratulating me. I said, I could drop dead right now and I'd be happy. Like, just because that was just such a joyous moment. And to be able to share that, not just with my family, but with, my friends in pro wrestling, was really cool. So Into the Wild, definitely one of my favorite books. There's also a graphic novel that I read, I think my senior year of high school, Watchmen, which is also like a superhero movie. Love that as well. Specifically just because of the whole kind of concept of like determinism, which like is kind of like being the master of your own fate and destiny. Like I think that's a cool concept. But then of course there's also like the opposite end of it, where it's just like the world is just like continuing to spin, and like all these plans are kind of set in motion and there's nothing you can do about it, like, which is like a bit of an like you'd have a crisis in your mind if you thought about that for too long. That there are these plans set in motion that you cannot change, and you are not you cannot determine your fate, and what's going to happen will happen. So
I think there could be like a book club going on in wrestling, because of all the people that are like talking about like the books, and Ryan Clancy and like Kyla and everybody that even at like Wrestling Open, that they're all like swapping books, and like Landon Hale was recommending some books to me the other day, and I was like, there really could be a wrestling book club.
That would actually be that's a great idea for like a podcast.
Yeah.
If you just get wrestlers to meet like every week, maybe change them in and out, but like talk about a book. I don't know. That'd be funny.
Oh man, Ryan Clancy should host it because he's the one that's like really been into that or whatever. So Ryan, get on
Yeah.
it.
Get some book recs from him maybe.
There you go. Um, so let's do something dear to my heart on this podcast, wrestling with positivity. So anything that you can think of that you could share with us that we wouldn't know, or whether something that you've done for a wrestler, maybe a wrestler's done for you, maybe a fan's done for you, something that you've done a fan, so anything that sticks out to your mind.
Um, I feel like I should definitely keep a list. Like I have a couple lists in my phone, but I'd like to keep more tabs on just like, you know, how many wrestlers have I, given tape to, or maybe even given tape to me, or like how many wrestlers have I picked up at airports and driven? Because like, I feel like I'm pretty generous in that sense. Where like, if somebody needs tape, like yeah, I'll get them tape. Somebody needs a snack, like they need a ride, like I'll do it.
Yeah.
As for fans, I think at my Boathouse Brawl match at Fight Life, a fan I think took the Bass Pro logo and said like rewrote it to saying like kick his ass or something like that. That was really cool. There was also a fan at Wrestling Open who gave me like a fish on a plaque. And it didn't like, I think they just like, I honestly think they told me they found it on the street. Like, and it was just like, oh, it's a sea bass. I don't know. So that's pretty thoughtful. People thinking about me in their day-to-day lives. Yeah. Yeah, those are just a few that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I always like to like talk about that like on the podcast because I always feel right like there's so much like negative into the world of like wrestling and stuff like that. So it's like we like to nobody ever like talks about like the positivity part of it and like the little things and like I'm
Yeah.
very fortunate enough between doing these podcasts and physically seeing like a whole bunch of things done. Like I just I need to do another wrestling with positivity. So like this year's been crazy because I usually drop one around Thanksgiving, but eventually in 2025 I'll drop another one. But I always like to bring these stories to light. So, so I have two final questions for you. Then we'll get into like everything else. If anybody has any other questions, feel free drop into the chat. I see that we still have like over 30 people like live into the chat. So thank you guys, appreciate you. So through the grapevine, I heard that you are a big SpongeBob SquarePants fan. So what is your favorite episode?
Ooh, man, this is the hardest question you're gonna ask me. Um,
These are the important questions that we need to know. So
yeah, it's like when I tell you I'm a huge SpongeBob fan, like I can quote episodes like line for line, like and just keep going.
yeah.
Like some of them, not all of them, but like most, like a good portion of them, of like the first like 2-3 seasons. I also some of my buddies who like don't do pro wrestling, my buddies from home. If I'm like hanging out with them, like one of them will say something, and then I'll just like quote SpongeBob, and it gets so bad that we'll like keep a tally of like how many times I quote SpongeBob. So like it's gone up to like 9, 10. Like I think there's like sometimes we bet on it. We're like, all right, what's the over under? Like how many times am I gonna quote SpongeBob?
Gotta start taking shots during it or something like that.
So bad. I could not do that. Okay. Favorite episode? I feel like it's a lot of people's favorites, but I feel like Band Geeks is like up there for me. Let's see if I can. I feel like I'd have to look at a list. I mean, the fact that I don't know it off the top of my head is bad, but there's also so many good
Putting you on
ones,
the
know what I
spot.
mean?
So Good Cop Bad Cop said in the chat, instead of the Blackpool Combat Club, there should be a Boston Book Club.
Yes, I agree. Like that. Yeah, I honestly think I'd have to stick with it's like a Band Eats the Pizza Delivery episode, also a great one.
So you're gonna have to
Yeah.
come out like at a Rumble, like a Halloween Rumble, and come out as SpongeBob or something.
Yeah, or I'll just like pick like a random one-off character, like Old Man Jenkins. I don't know. Um,
I see this
yeah.
happening now. Now it's gonna happen. We
Yeah.
put it
So,
into the universe. So
I actually kind of want me and Sean maybe to get like, if we start, tagging Little Morgan, maybe we get like SpongeBob inspired gear. I don't think I've seen anybody with that. So
some rad
maybe,
pro wrestling. You could like show up like
well, no, it's 1995.
Yeah.
SpongeBob came out yet, so we
Damn.
can't time travel.
Ah,
But
damn. So that's right.
4 more years. If we get SpongeBob and Rad Pro, that'd be insane.
We're
But
here for
4
it.
more years. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. All right. So my final question on this podcast, and then we'll go into everything that you have coming up, so everybody can come and see you and stuff like that. So like you've been in the business for a while. So for a fan, maybe thinking about getting into wrestling, or maybe someone who just started, what would a piece of advice that you would give them?
I'll give the same piece of advice that this just goes back to some positivity. Anthony Green has been pretty much a staple in my career. Like I said, I talked to him at wrestling shows, when I was a fan, and then he was an integral part in my training when I started. And then he got signed early early in my training career when he got signed to WWE. And then came back, and I was actually at that show that he returned to the Indies on at Limitless. But I remember I attended a seminar of his at Limitless sometime maybe February of 2022 or 23. 23 it would have been, I think. Maybe it was February. I don't remember the month, but a couple years ago. And I asked him, what's one thing you wish you knew when you were kind of at my level in your career? And he said, in wrestling, nothing means anything until it means something. Sort of like put that into more like exemplar terms, because it is a pretty like vague statement. Nothing means anything until it means something. Like all of your hard work, all of the things that kind of you put towards your goals, like they don't mean anything until they finally pay off. Like I feel like my hard work at the LA dojo and my time going back to California and traveling all around and training pretty frequently and regularly at Nepal, like none of that paid off until like I had my match with Dijak, or I wrestled at New Japan Strong. Like, I think Anthony Green even said that, when he was with the WWE, he was at the Performance Center every day and he was working extremely hard. And then, he got released and like he's back on the Indies, and he's like, all right, like, well, all of that work meant nothing, right, at that time. And then, all these other opportunities hit up where, now he wrestled for was a wrestler on Pro Wrestling Noah and got to travel all around Japan. And I think he was invited back to the Performance Center as a guest coach a few times. So like, his hard work is finally paying off. He's kind of now seeing the fruits of his labor. And I think that's something that people kind of need to be aware of, is that it does take time. And sometimes you have to be patient. You can't be impatient or frustrated. You just have to kind of keep seeing the course. And also just like, ask yourself, am I going where I want to be, and really kind of ask yourself some of the hard questions, and do a lot of self-reflection. But
I think that's great advice. Definitely great advice. So let's talk about what you got coming up. So if people want to come see you, or if they want to come watch you, so tell everybody what you got coming up.
Yes. So there's no full graphic made for it yet, but January 10th, I am back at Chaotic Wrestling. I'm in the Pandemonium match alongside Mortar, Armani Chaos, Anthony Green, and two more. I think Jerry Rivera as well. He qualified, so should be an exciting match. I think there's still one more talent yet to be announced, so should be great. It's my first Pandemonium match. Please check it out. It's in, I believe it's in Malden, Massachusetts at the Irish American Club. Great venue, should be awesome. That's on January 10th. Following day, I am at Focus Pro in Braintree, Mass. at Widowmaker Brewery. I'm wrestling Diego Alvarez, who is someone I am familiar with. We are actually former, training partners when he trained at Nepois. And we've had a previous match a bit of a while ago, maybe almost 2 years. So this should be a step above that. I do have plans January 12th as well. They're to be announced, so we can have to wait and see where I'm at then. And then really just after that, two more dates in January, also have yet to be announced. But should be a pretty busy January, especially for me being a amateur wrestling coach and bouncing all around. I'm always in New Hampshire at some given weekend, either coaching or wrestling. That's kind of what my weekends have been at. But yeah, that's what I got for January at least.
Definitely. That's awesome. So tell everybody where they could follow you so they can keep up with all your matches coming and what isn't announced that will be announced and all that fun stuff.
Yes. Yep. You can follow me on X or Instagram at Seabass Finn. That's all I really got for socials. I keep saying I'm gonna eventually get some merchandise on a website or something. I'm trying to work on that. Also trying to be better at merch because man, I'm atrocious at it. But
that's a lot.
25. That's my goal. Get better at that. Better at social media. All that.
You got to get you an intern. There you go. Get one of your kids.
Dude, I was actually just talking to a referee today that I used to wrestle with. We were in high school around the same time. He said that's what he does for his job. So I was like, oh, maybe I could use somebody like that.
There you go. So where they could make the merch and do this and put it out there and all the social medias. I mean, you like you said, you teach a bunch of these kids are snappy or whatever. So it's put them to work. But you're not learned. You didn't do this right today. You didn't do this bridge proper. So now do my social media. I'm here for it. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to talk about? For during this podcast.
No, I think we hit all the bases. I think I'm great.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so glad that you came on here. We got to talk a lot. I see great things for you in 2025. So the journey is just, I'm glad that I'm here for the train of the journey. And you're going to have an amazing 2025. At least it has ended 2024, on amazing notes for you. So congratulations. You should be really proud. And I'm here for all these other matches that are going to come. So I need you and Sammy Diaz round 2, pretty much. So, but yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all your questions. Good Cop Bad Cop said he just followed. He says, cheers, Tiff and Seabass. Glad I lucked out and just happened to be on YouTube and you guys were chatting. So so make sure you guys are following Indie Wrestling Corner for all up and coming stuff. So might have one more podcast at the end of the year. We'll see. So again, make sure you're following. Make sure you follow Seabass Finn. But yeah, so thank you again for coming onto the podcast. I appreciate you. So guys, you know the drill. Stay safe, support independent wrestling. Talk to you guys soon. Have a good night.
And then I know Ethan had a couple of things